during this pandemic. Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? Dave? When you say you're trending 4 per day, that's people who haven't necessarily been tested, but you think qualify to be tested?
No, those are the ones that are coming out testing positive.
Okay, 4 per day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, as far as the viral alerts, those are pre-screened kind of questions that kind of gives us a heads up that, you know, they're coughing, they have flu-like symptoms, and we respond. Some of those people get tested, some don't once we turn them over to the hospital. They've had a whole different testing criteria since this thing has come about. But again, the majority of the tests are coming back negative. We're just still on that uptick. And we're still doing pretty good as a county compared to some of the other counties in South Florida and Orange County. Have you
seen the dashboard where they're now reporting cases by zip codes?
Yes, and if you go to that dashboard and look down, you can really get detailed in some of the information that they have. And even in the hospital link I shared with you all as well, you can see where the uptick is, and you can move that bar back and forth and show you where they anticipate or projected where the increase of cases and hospitalizations will be.
Would anyone else like to ask the question of the chief? Well, we certainly appreciate all the work you guys are doing. You're certainly on the front lines of all this stuff, and I think most people don't really fully appreciate what you guys are having to confront and deal with, and taking people to the hospital. And we just really appreciate you and all the first responders. Thank you for all you guys are doing.
We appreciate that, Mayor, and we're going to continue doing a great service we do, and we're making sure that we're protected and making sure the constituents are protected as well when we're running on.
Any other questions? Dan, you've done this before. What is the best way when we have a live council meeting, what is the best way for people to be recognized? I know when we do that at the EOC, it gets a little hairy when everybody just tries to jump in. What seems to work best at the EOC is when people say, I'd like to speak, or, you know, when there's a pause, and then that way, you know, they're recognized individually instead of just jumping in. That seems to work a lot better, don't you think, Bill?
That's correct. It keeps us from talking over each other.
You have any wisdom for us, Dan?
Well, thank you.
Do it more we have.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I think you're right. The one thing I think you have to do is, I get this as a virtual meeting and it's a lot different, and it lends itself to, I think, a little bit in less formal behavior. But I think we can probably start using some of the same things that you always do for a regular council meeting. You know, technically, at any council meeting, no one's supposed to address the council without asking the presiding officer for permission to do so. We've sort of had and at City Hall, you have a light system, which basically is the way you ask for permission. So we don't have that available to us right now. So we want to make sure that I think everybody's asking the presiding officer how to, if they want to say something to do, ask for permission to be recognized. Remember, of course, like I said earlier, we're showing this on TV, we're broadcasting it this way, so we want to make sure people can follow along. It's going to be very difficult for them to follow along as it is, but we want to make sure that they can follow along. And also, our intended plan is to take the recording that's made of this video of this meeting or any other meeting and then rebroadcast it. So we want to make sure that we do that. So my first suggestion, Mayor, would be to make sure that all the speakers are recognized and people are understanding and they ask for permission basically to speak.
Okay. And then one thing that will be kind of like our light system, I can see everybody's mic when you have it muted, and when you unmute it, I know that you're probably wanting to speak or you forgot to unmute your mic. Keith? Oh, I can see your hand.
Yeah, we can just raise our hand too.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other suggestions?
Well, you know, from what I've seen, I think we're going to have to we should, and we'll work on this before Thursday, we'll probably put together a little bit more of an expanded statement, Mayor, for you to read at the beginning of the meeting
Yeah.
that would address that. And also, I think it works very well if those folks who are not planning to speak, make sure they're muted and they know how to mute themselves, cut down on background noise and all that. And everybody just needs to get in the habit of doing so, so that we can keep it clean.
Good. Yeah, that'll certainly help. Do you have any other pointers from experience on how, to recognize public comment? I know we talked about emailing, and you talked about having a live mic. Maybe you could share that with everybody here.
Well, here's the plan that we've been working on, and for the last since the governor entered his order a couple of weeks ago, allowing for what's been called communications media, basically technology, to allow for that to be used for public meetings. There's been a lot of folks who've been trying different options. So we've been looking at a lot of different governments and what they've been doing, and to try to put something in place that we felt would work with St. Cloud. Our number one goal when working with Bill and Veronica Miller has been very active in this, and Jay's been active in it also, is to try to make the virtual meeting, the web meeting, as consistent with a regular city council meeting as possible. So we thought it was important to us, and I know Mr. Cooper's having some issues with that right now, but we should be able to work through that. It was important that the council be able to see the other council members at all times, because obviously when you're sitting at the dais during the council meeting, you can turn and you can see a council member. And look, we didn't want the situation where it was difficult to do that, and we think using this video conferencing software like this, Zoom or GoToMeeting, enables us to do that. The other thing we wanted to do is we want to make sure that staff would have an ability to present cases or do similar to how they do in the past. So how we would envision it would working is that we would go through the agenda, and the mayor, you would ask for the agenda item to be read. The city clerk, who will have access to, will be part of the video conference. She will read the item into the record. And the first thing we would do is ask, is their staff ready for a presentation? And so then at that point, the video conferencing would change, where it wouldn't change, but it would recognize the staff who was going to provide the presentation. So what we've been working for, and I don't know if Jay's back or maybe Mark can do, one of the rooms you're seeing on the screen, if you've got all of them up, I think it's probably the St. Cloud Community Development Department, one that I'm seeing with the city logo on it.
Right.
That one would be designated for the city staff to participate in the meeting. So, for example, if you were doing a planning meeting, and Andre, or let's start on your council meeting agenda for Thursday, there's a budget resolution. So Wendy Colazzo will be doing the budget presentation for staff, as she always does. So she would show up on the screen when it's time for her to do her presentation. She would unmute, and then you would see her video and her presenting to you on the item. Then, obviously, Mayor, you would handle it the same way you would anybody. Has anybody have any questions of Ms. Colazzo? And then you'd ask for public comment. What we have thought about from the terms of public comment, excuse me, that's one of the things you need to make sure you put into we put in our little thing that makes sure people shut off their cell phones, because you tend to be a little bit less formal when you're sitting in your office or your home with that stuff. So, so one of the things we thought from a public comment perspective was that we would actually allow for public comment to be communicated to the city council through three avenues. The first would be to set up a public access space at City Hall that meets all the recommendations of the CDC, where individuals that are allowed in that have been pre-screened for medical conditions, basically for fever and cough, and then do the social distancing in the room to the extent we're able to do that by limiting the number of people that come in. And then those people would actually be able to watch the same webinar or the same video conference we're doing right now on a bigger screen. And there would actually be a podium set up in front of that big screen or something set up in front of the big screen, so that so if you call an agenda item, so think working with our example of the budget resolution, once the budget resolution presentation is done by Ms. Galazzo, then you'd ask for public comment. If anybody wants to come and speak to the public, you would invite them up, Mayor, to speak, and then they would use that public access room to speak to the city council, and one of these boxes would open up and you'd be able to see the person speaking and they would address the council. That we felt that was the best way to do it so that we can control the environment, the video conferencing environment. Some municipalities and counties are using, are allowing the public to access their actual video conferencing. We found it a little difficult to manage if you can get a lot of people on there. So we felt this was the better way to do that, and as long as we did the requirements of the screening and the social distancing, we felt it was the best way to at least suggest that to you as the council. The other option that people will have, provided they are, for example, if they do not want to come to City Hall or they can't leave their house because of the whatever their reason is, or they just don't feel comfortable doing that, we set up as we provide notice that they could send an email to the city clerk commenting on any agenda item on the agenda, including the citizens forum, and they could send that, and that email will be read to the council at the appropriate time. The third way of doing it would be for them to actually either mail or drop off a written statement to address an item that's on the agenda, to basically to do that. This process that we've sort of put together, it's patterned after what the city of Orlando has done recently and what the city of Miami has done. The city of Miami actually used a system which I don't think St. Cloud has available to them. They use a system where they actually recorded telephonically messages regarding agenda items, and those messages were played back at their commission meetings. Obviously they're a much larger city with a lot greater resources to be able to do that. A couple other cities are using a telephone system to where they're taking calls from individuals, where they are being placed into the meeting. I've heard some good things and some bad things about it. It really depends on the number of folks that want to speak on a particular item, because if you have several people who want to call in and speak on a particular agenda item, then it requires a staff member being able to juggle those calls to put them into the commission, into the council meeting at the appropriate time to do that. So for now, we have not put that into the system or at least a plan that we're working with for at least for Thursday night. One thing that Mr. Sturgeon and I think agree absolutely about is that whatever we do on Thursday may or may not be what we do on April 23rd, because this is somewhat of a moving target for us. It may be a way that the city council can still provide the opportunity to the public to get a reasonable opportunity to talk to you about these issues, which they are absolutely entitled to do. But of course, we're working under unusual circumstances. The other thing we've tried to do is, if you look at the agenda is limited to those essential items that we felt had to be done and had to move forward, because we are working towards, not necessarily avoiding, but we're trying to delay some of these quasi-judicial matters that require special handling or potentially could bring out individuals that might want to feel like they have to oppose a potential application on the development site. So we're trying to keep those off, put those off as long as we can before and to see how this whole situation develops, so that at least we can put some good practice in, learn how it's going, and maybe make some adjustments if need be. One of the things we don't want to do is we certainly want to give the public the opportunity to speak about a controversial issue, but by the same token, property owners have rights too that we have to maintain, and if they have a right to move through the process, we want to give them the opportunity to do so as quickly as possible. So we sent around that resolution to you. I know you sent around earlier today. Bill and I were working on it, and Veronica, mostly Veronica I'm taking a lot of credit. By speaking, I'm probably getting a lot of credit for this, but Veronica and Jay and a bunch of other staff members worked on the behind the scenes particulars to do that. We just sort of put it together in a little fancier package that we can look at and basically present to you. So the idea would be that something like that resolution would be presented to you as the first item at the council meeting on Thursday, so that we can bring this in place. And if, as I said earlier, if after Thursday night we feel like it needs to be changed or we want to change it, we'll just move forward and try to change it. So that's pretty much what the plan is right now. Any questions?
I'm sure
Yes,
we'll work that out to go along. Does someone have a question?
Yes,
Mr.
Chuck Cooper. Dan, what about, I had a call from Darren Davis. He wanted to be able to speak, about the property down there. How is he going to be able to do that? Who's gonna at least give him a start out to a learning curve before that night?
Well, the way we envision it, Mr. Cooper, would be that anybody that shows up at City Hall would be directed to the chambers where it would be set up for the public to address the council. So they would watch it on the screen. There'll be a staff member there, I envision, and we talked about it, and I believe Ivy would actually be sitting up at the dais in one of the clerk spots over there. So that, and there would be another staff member there. So when it comes to that item or a particular item, as I said earlier, the mayor would ask for public comment. The people who want to address the city council would stand up and come closer to the setup, and they would just speak to you as the council through the video conferencing.
Okay, Bill, can you talk to Darren Davis and give him a call and please tell him to come either at City Hall or on the internet and do whatever you guys want to do with him? Or I already spoke to Mr. Cooper. Oh, okay. You're ahead of the game.
Have any other questions, Mr. Cooper?
That's it. Thank you.
Councilmember Trace?
So on the live stream type questions, I think it's a good idea to have folks in person be able to make comment, but I just did a test on my phone and it's 36 seconds behind of what we're talking about and what comes up on the phone. So it's going to be difficult to do any over the live stream. So I think it's good having folks be able to come into City Hall and make comment.
Well, I'm sure there's going to be some challenges. Like right now when you're talking, you're kind of breaking up, at least on my end. I'm sure there's going to be some challenges. That'd be one of them for sure.
Well, and one of the things that we've seen where other entities have live streamed their meetings and wanted to have contemporaneous comments where people weren't actually at City Hall, and we're not ready for that. But I do think that we'd have to give that serious consideration, especially if we start moving forward with some quasi-judicial matters. What we've seen done is on some of these rules where they actually build in a delay before any action is taken on a particular matter to see if anybody who is maybe watching on a live stream and is dealing with that 36-second delay that you're referring to, Mr. Trace, so that they do it. I saw a policy that we've looked at a lot of these. So a policy where they actually went through what you typically do, staff, applicant, public comment, and present, and then before the presiding officer asked for a motion, they literally waited 2 minutes and an established 2-minute period of time to see if anybody was going to submit. That place we're taking contemporaneous phone calls from individuals, which I'm not a big fan of. Because of the way they had it set up. What they were doing there is a phone call. The clerk would actually answer the phone and say, Miss Smith is on the phone, here's her comment. So I don't think that was a good way to communicate it. you have the clerk basically trying to repeat what some citizen is saying. It puts the clerk in a difficult position, and it puts this, and it doesn't necessarily give the citizen the comfort level that what he or she is saying is being accurately communicated. So, but we may have to go to something like that if, depending how long this situation lasts.
I could see whether that would be a real challenge. I'm sure hoping that this will not be a long extended thing for several more months. But I'm sure we're all hoping for that. Any other questions? Any clarifications? Or I don't see any raised hands.
Well, Mayor, like we said, we know we sent that to you earlier, so take a good look at it. If you have any questions, call me. If you, we try to work with a simple formula that would try to replicate pretty much how you run your council meetings to do with it. So we are open to any suggestion that you possibly can provide.
Well, just looking at the screen, it really does. I kind of watch, you know, when you unmute your mic, that I know you're wanting to speak, and I don't always see those lights. You can unmute your mic, wave your hand if I've overlooked you, but I'm sure we'll work it out. We got a good crew here, so. Is there anything else for us, Mr. Sturgeon?
You've got where you can mute your.
Down in the bottom left-hand corner of my screen, and when you pull your cursor down, you'll have a bar that pops up that doesn't stay up unless you pull your cursor down. And then on the far left side, it'll say mute, unmute. There's a little speaker there, or like a microphone rather. Is that on yours?
Do what now? No.
Your cursor doesn't, you don't have a bar pops up when you pull your cursor down to the bottom. You might not even touch it with your, you got a touch screen, don't you?
Yes.
It'd be down at the very bottom.
No, when I did that, everything comes up completely.
Yeah, mine's at the top.
Yours is at the top?
Yeah. I'm on an iPad Pro though, so.
Okay.
I got you on speaker, Bill. But I'm not getting where I can turn it off and back on.
Mayor, can I be recognized?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Cooper, if you have a mouse connected to your laptop, it may be a little bit easier to do it if you have a mouse. You can roll the mouse on the screen, and either the bottom or the top should light up with a bunch of icons at the bottom that you should be able to mute or unmute or chat, however you want to communicate.
Okay, I've got one, but I'll get it connected.
Okay.
So, Mayor,
I can also go online and check a YouTube. I mean, that's what I did to get started. Just, it was very helpful just learning some of the basics anyway.
Right.
Mr.
Mayor,
Mazeris.
quickly, so there's two things. First of all, obviously, I think Mr. Sturgeon is going to try to do another one of these practice sessions before Thursday with at least its staff and do that, and so we can work on some of these technical issues. The way we have it set up right now is really the way that I think Mr. Sturgeon and I envisioned having it, is that this would be basically the 7 visual boxes, the main visual boxes where people can see. Basically, this is the folks that sit on the dais.
Right.
The one question I have is, there's going to be this public access room, and we could keep that public access room video open all the time, which I think is probably a good idea. So that you, at least the city council would be like you're looking out into the chambers.
Right.
To be able to see that. So we'll probably add that to make sure to do that. We got a thumbs up, 2 thumbs up. Everybody everybody liked the movie, good.
Mr. Sturgeon,
Yes, Mayor.
your mic is off. I thought you wanted to say something.
Nope, sorry.
All right. Anybody else have any comment? Anything you'd like to add? Lynette, you've been awfully quiet. I can't believe we got a meeting when you haven't talked.
Hi.
All right. Anybody else? Any other business? Any other comment? Are there no objections? We're going to adjourn Are we done? All right, we're
Thank you.
done, and we're gonna have another practice session, and you'll send us out an email on that, I'm sure. Mr.
Yeah,
Stern.
sounds good.
All right?
Yes, sir, sounds good.
We'll get you
All right, I
hooked
wish
up.
you guys the best. Y'all please stay safe and, wash your hands and follow the rules and social distancing. With that, we're adjourned.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, thank you.
And I want to thank Veronica and Mark and Jay for all of your work. Thank you, guys.